This is Popular Front, a podcast focused on the very niche and kind of geeky details of modern warfare with me, Jake Hanrahan. Today we're speaking to Alexander McKeever. He's an independent researcher and he's been documenting all of the recent assassinations in Afrin in Northern Syria. Specifically, he's been looking at a group called Wrath of Olives. That's a low-scale assassination squad, basically, of Kurdish militants that have been in Afrin assassinating the Turkish-backed rebels in the area since they invaded with the Turkish military at the start of the year. If you like what we're doing with Popular Front and want to keep it going, please do consider supporting at patreon.com/popularfront. This episode is sponsored by thedefensepost.com. We had this thing happen in Afrin, or Afrin, however you want to say it, at the start of the year, right? Where, Turkey, with the help of Syrian rebels, invaded Afrin. Can you tell us about that? What happened?
Yeah, so that began on January 20th this year. It had been rumored for maybe over a year. I mean, Turkey's Erdogan says a lot of stuff, and it kind of no one really believes it for a while, but it did eventually happen towards the end of January. And it took about 2 months. Sort of went slow at first. It seemed like YPG put up stiff resistance sort of around the edges, but by early March, Turkey and their allies had taken the whole border area, so stretching from Azaz all the way down to the northern end of Idlib. And then pretty soon after that, it was they took Afrin city pretty fast, but it was actually by March 18th. And that was precipitated by what seemed like a YPG withdrawal and a mass exodus by civilians. The Human Rights Watch estimate about 137,000 people fled.
I didn't know it was that much. That is a lot of people.
Yeah, that's the estimate. It's hard to say for sure. And this was in the initial month, and they ended up in the Shahba region, which is the region right to the east of Afrin, north of Aleppo city.
Right, and which groups were involved in the taking of Afrin? Because I remember seeing all of this footage where they were like, yeah, we're training up these soldiers and the Turks have been giving them uniforms. Maybe you can tell us, how did that happen? You know, there were people crossing into Turkey to train and coming back and forth.
Yeah, so the direct Turkish involvement in Syria really began in August of 2016. That was the start of the Euphrates Shield operations, which Turkey embedded along with a wide spectrum of rebel groups and basically invaded North Aleppo, initially fighting ISIS. This culminated in the capture of El Bab, which is a mid-sized city to the northeast of Aleppo city. Yeah, and then this became sort of a foot race with the YPG, both from the east and the west, because the YPG was trying to, connect the cantons from the Minbij area, just west of the Euphrates, to connect it to the Afrin canton all the way in the west.
Right, and that would have basically given them almost total control of the border of northern Syria with Turkey. Is that correct?
Yeah. If you ignore there's a small area from Azaz to Jarablus, but it would create this one coherent, continuous YPG territory, which was basically Turkey's worst nightmare. After fighting this 30-year insurgency with the PKK and them viewing the YPG and the PKK as analogous.
Yeah, no, it's basically like having your worst enemy on your doorstep and being able to gather. Now, I am no fan of Turkey, but I can understand why they were like, we want to get in there. And which groups did they use to invade? Because like we were saying, it's not. There was some Turkish military, moving in there, but a lot of it was so-called Syrian rebels.
Yeah, so it really initially was, so you had this territory in northern Aleppo that in February 2016, in a coordinated assault between the regime and some of the Afrin YPG, as well as Russia, cut off this one pocket around the city of Azaz on the border of Turkey. And so there's a whole group of there's a whole spectrum of rebel groups within that town. And that's sort of what became the nucleus of this Northern Syria Turkish proxy force. And this includes, just random small local groups that are revolve around like one town, to some ethnically Turkmen groups that have become throughout the war have been very close to Turkey, and as well as some bigger national groups like Felak Hasham, which is probably estimates of maybe 3,000 to 5,000, 6,000 fighters, and are prevalent across all the northwestern front lines, from Latakia through Idlib, Hama, western Aleppo, northern Aleppo. So they're really probably, I'd say, the most important group that's Turkey's close ally in northern Aleppo.
Felak al-Sham?
Yeah.
Right, and can you tell us a bit more about them?
Yeah, so they started in 2014 as a merger of, I think it was like 19 different rebel groups, a lot of them pretty small, pretty localized. When they first came out, there were, from like Western journals and stuff, analysis that was connecting them and some of their component groups to the Syrian Muslim Brotherhood. Though really this was more of a funding thing. The Muslim Brotherhood, because their leadership was all outside of the country, is sort of irrelevant. I mean, ideologically, you can say a lot of the groups are the same, but the organization itself is...
Right, and the Muslim Brotherhood thing, I know it's a big thing out there in the Middle East, but it's a bit of an umbrella group.
Well, also, like, each country has their own party, own Muslim Brotherhood party, but Syria's, the party had been banned since the 80s, and the Muslim Brotherhood party was based in Turkey, and they tried to take advantage of the revolution, but they had no actual ties really inside the country. But anyway, digression. Ideologically, Islamists, sort of, not Salafi, not like Jabhat al-Nusra or anything like that, but definitely Islamist oriented.
Sure, like hardline conservatives.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah. And so going back to Afrin, when the invasion happened, how many fighters were attacking the YPG?
Estimates are like 25,000, 30,000 rebels. It's hard to say how accurate that actually is.
And how big is Afrin? Like, what kind of city is it? How many people were there?
So the population of the district itself was 200,000. That's pre-war census. I believe that's 2004. And the city itself, I think, was about 40,000, maybe 50,000. So it made up a significant portion of the district, but wasn't necessarily a large city itself.
And how did the operation go down? Like, I saw, we all saw the footage. There was looting. Come on, let's be honest. They were openly looting people's houses in the middle of the street. They had no shame about it. Why did it go down that way, do you think? And who was responsible?
Well, I think one thing that's important to note is that unlike most of northern Aleppo, Afrin was relatively untouched by the war. I mean, the government pulled out in 2012 to sort of consolidate their control elsewhere, and the YPG took over. It becomes a canton in 2014, and was not under bombardment, aerial bombardment by the regime. In 2016, sort of was in this tactic agreement with Russians. The Russians embedded sort of as a deterrent against the Turks. So like the people's houses weren't looted. People hadn't fled. They're pre-Olive Branch.
Oh yeah, we should mention this operation to invade Afrin and take it away from the YPG and the civilians living there. It was called Operation Olive Branch, and well, maybe you can explain why they called it that. It's a bit of a stab in the neck, that name,
Yeah. So Afrin's main industry historically has been farming of olives and oil production, and so this. So the name's a reference to that, and obviously sort of tongue-in-cheek because Olive Branch, peace, but really the opposite.
Yeah, really the opposite. Well, yeah, maybe you can go back to that. You were saying like before this happened, it was like you said, it was relatively untouched. And I know that a lot of refugees from Aleppo and other places, even Idlib, ended up in Afrin before all this happened.
Yeah, there's estimates of, I think, up to 100,000. It's hard to say for sure. And I mean, people had, throughout the war, fled Afrin too just because of economic hardship. I mean, I know Afrin had a small Yazidi population clustered around 3 different little geographical areas, and a lot of the leadership of that community had fled to Europe a long time ago, in the last 7 years. So like people had left, but it had attracted, these internally displaced people. But going back to the looting, unlike other parts of Syria, like the North Aleppo stretch that the rebels took in 2016, 2017 with the help of Turkey, Afrin was relatively well off. Like people's houses hadn't been looted before, people's houses hadn't been bombed. So there was a lot of sort of civilian material that was available for these groups to loot in the first place, unlike other areas.
Yeah, there was plenty of spoils to take for them.
Yeah, and it was just when the city fell, there was no armed resistance because the YPG had pulled out, and then it just became a free-for-all between fighters of various groups.
I know what you're saying, the YPG pulled out. They even said, right, we're putting out before, any more civilians get killed. But there was fighting before that. It wasn't like they just fled. It wasn't like Kirkuk in Iraq or anything. They were fighting, right? I saw a lot of videos.
Yeah, the operation itself took 2 months. And I mean, there were probably, I know some people had been documenting it, but there was probably about 30 or 40 anti-tank guided missile videos, like, various Russian anti-tank missiles.
From the YPG?
Yeah, from the YPG side. And the estimates of FSA casualties, Turkey claims 300, YPG claims 800 or something. So probably somewhere in between those numbers. Turkey, I know there's confirmed, I believe it's 55 Turkish soldiers were killed since January 20th. That includes after operations had ceased. But I believe during operations, it was 50 Turkish soldiers were killed.
Right, so what kind of role were the actual Turkish army proper? What role were they playing in Olive Branch, the attack on Afrin?
Air Force was involved. There was heavy bombardment beforehand, artillery bombardment, and that continued through the operation, so softening up YPG defenses. I mean, before the operation, you'd seen pictures for years of the extensive fortifications around the borders of Afrin, specifically around not actually necessarily focused towards Turkey, more focused towards Syrian rebel territory. So there's a stretch of trenches on a hilltop looking over Idlib. There was the same, like these towers and trenches, so a fortification system looking over Azaz. And those, in the first couple days of the operation, had been leveled by Turkish artillery and Air Force bombardment. So Turkey had also embedded on the ground with rebel groups, and also gave rebel groups armor, like various armored personnel carriers, some tanks. Though looking at the videos, it's hard to tell if these groups were actually given this or they were sort of used them for propaganda purposes. Because there's a lot of videos from the operation of them sort of driving down streets of recently conquered towns in these APCs, and sort of in very sort of braggadocious ways.
And what kind of training were they given to the rebels that they basically employed to deal out this attack and this invasion? I saw a few videos and some images, and it looked like they were giving them some real, proper training. It wasn't just your usual kind of, this is how to throw a grenade, blah, blah, blah. It looked like military training to me, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, for the last 2 years, every couple month or two or whatever, you'll see from various rebel groups, 500 soldiers or 500 recruits have graduated from whatever camp under Turkish funding and I guess Turkish training. I'm not an expert in military training. I can't say exactly how professional it was, But I know since 2016, you've seen these sort of propaganda videos and imagery from the rebel side of so-and-so graduates of whatever camp.
No, I mean, I'm not an expert either on the kind of tactical training side of things, but they are NATO's second largest army, and they are training these guys to go and attack what are also NATO's allies. I mean, excellent, it's a mad situation. But so what happened after that? Let's get into that now. After Afrin fell, after the YPG pulled out, then what happened?
So, as we said before, there was the immediate chaos in, this was March 18th. Videos all over social media of looting. So you had this statue in one of the main circles in Afrin city. And, I mean, the rebels, took a bulldozer or something and threw a chain around it and dragged it down.
Well, yeah. So this was Kawa the blacksmith, a famous kind of historical figure in all of Kurdish culture. It's not just PKK, YPG, whatever. It's all of Kurdish culture, which I think that was a big blow to a lot of people because they're saying, we're not against the Kurds. We just don't like the PKK or the YPG. So why are you taking down the Kawa statue then? It was a bit of a clear fuck you to everybody, I think.
Yeah, and there were rebel activists I remember at the time that wrote articles being like, "What the hell? This is exactly what they're accusing of us of. Why are you doing this? Blah blah blah." So, yeah, that was really bad imagery on their part. Pretty much as soon as the operation ended, also there was large-scale infighting between several groups. There were videos of tens of people being captured, and that's sort of indicative of the security situation in the first couple of months. There was a ton of reports of infighting. There was mysterious bombings in Afrin city that weren't claimed, assassinations. And besides the infighting, also, since Afrin fell to Turkey and their allies, there have been also a ton of reports of, besides the looting, kidnappings, tortures, disappearances, the claiming of abandoned property. And these have been reported on by various human rights watch groups. I believe Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the UN, as well as rebel media groups too, pro-rebel media groups, both within Syria and outside of Syria.
Yeah, well, we'll get into all the kidnap stuff later, but tell me about these groups that surfaced, these assassination hit squads, if you like, Wrath of Olives, I think the Hawks or something. Tell me about them.
Yeah, so, well, okay, as soon as Afrin fell, the YPG was claiming insurgency actions. In the first 2 weeks, there was still sort of, I think, pockets of YPG remnants up in the mountains, so that's not necessarily insurgency. That was this is sort of in the central highlands of the district. But I'd say the insurgency begins in halfway through the first week of April. That's when the actions start being reported outside of these isolated rural areas. And initially, the YPG claimed a bunch of actions. Well, not a bunch. I think April is 12, May there was 9. And there wasn't much video or picture evidence of these. But at the same time, there's a group initially called Afrin Hawks, which popped up, which drew a lot of speculation on social media that it was basically a made-up group that was using imagery from other conflicts or other parts of the conflict to claim insurgent actions. And I think the general consensus now is that group was just a social media phenomenon. But since then, beginning in June, this group showed up. Its name is Ghadab al-Zaytun, which in Arabic means wrath of olives, referring again to the olive production prevalent throughout Afrin, and also sort of a FU to Operation Olive Branch.
Absolutely. You got Operation Olive Branch, and then you got these what are basically guerrillas, right? It's like guerrilla actions, like you say in actions, they were all like guerrilla actions. you know, guys turning up in the middle of the town and shooting people in the night and what have you. And it's called Wrath of Olives. It's very clear the message they're trying to send, you know?
Yeah, so this group declares itself in June. But the first couple actions they claimed, they claimed some down in Idlib, in southern Idlib, and I've also seen on social media people saying, I haven't actually taken the time to verify this, but that these images also were taken from somewhere else. But pretty soon after that, I'd say halfway through July, they started posting videos of these nighttime ambushes and IED attacks. Initially, that's what they were doing, that were clearly ongoing. They weren't recycling the footage from somewhere else. And then in early August, I believe it was August 5th, they posted their first execution video, which they've become known for since then. They basically set up a fake roadblock on the side of the road. This is in northeastern Afrin, in an area known as Shera or Sharan, and stopped a guy on a motorbike, dragged him into the woods, looked at his ID, and then shot him in the chest with an AK.
And this is all on camera, right? I've seen it. It's like real kind of filmed on a potato, you know, but it's all, you know, legit video footage from that area. Someone's filmed it on their phone and stuff.
Yeah. And this guy, his name was Akash Haji Ahmed, and he was actually a member of the local council in Shera. So after the Operation Olive Branch, Turkey started creating all these government institutions. This is similar to what's happened in other rebel-held territory, where these local councils pop up, corresponding to like a main town or a sub-district. So all the 7 sub-districts of Afrin have these. And this guy was a member of this Turkish-backed local council, and they executed him in broad daylight and accused him of being an informer and assisting Turkey in the looting of locals' possessions. So this started this series of execution videos that this group, Wrath of Olives, has been posting for the last 4 months.
Right, and their accusation, if I remember correctly, was this guy is a collaborator. He helped the Turkish-backed rebels, if you like, come in and start killing people around here.
Yeah.
Right, and then they started bringing out there was a lot more videos after that, right? They had these spooky, like, I don't know, some weird, like, Saw, music from the film Saw or something like that. But, you know, they're turning up in the middle of the night on the side of the road, shooting people through their windscreens, you know, other members of these militias that took over Afrin. And I've seen these videos where they're like holding up bits of paper and stuff like that, you know, to basically say we are Wrath of Olives and stuff.
Yeah, those papers will have the date on it too, as a way to authenticate the attack. Okay. Yeah, usually it would say Gharab Zaytun and then have the date underneath it.
Okay, so I guess that's in a way a response to this earlier thing, you know, where Afrin Hawks, when people say, no, it's not real. This is like, no, it is real. You know, we're showing you.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, these nighttime ambushes on individual rebels, either on motorcycles or in pickup trucks or whatever, the YPG has been engaging in similar actions since Afrin fell, and like almost identical. Like they're hiding behind rocks or whatever in the night, and it's like a gunman and a cameraman, and they shoot them, run up, record their body, and then take off. So a lot of the YPG actions are actually exactly the same as those. The difference is really the execution videos.
Yeah, well, this is where my theory is, and a lot of people won't like this, but I don't care because war is grisly anyway, and this is how things happen. My theory is kind of Wrath of Olives does the dirtiest stuff that the guerrilla wing in Afrin, if you like, of the YPG don't really want to claim because they don't want to upset, you know, their coalition partners, the US and stuff like that. But like you said, the videos look very similar. In fact, I spoke to Everest from Calibre Obscura, and he said one of the guns used in a Wrath of Olives execution video was almost identical, or it was identical to a weapon used in a YPG assassination video, you know?
Yeah, that's not surprising.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, do you think I've spoken to people in YPG and say, no, it's definitely not us. But, like I said, war is horrible. It wouldn't surprise me. And they, maybe you could tell us about that statement, right? YPG released a statement saying it's not us because I think the US leaned on them or something.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. The statement came out on August 22nd. It initially says the inhumane crimes committed by the occupying Turkish army and its terrorist allies in Afrin recently have been increasing. Various armed groups operating under different names are conducting military operations in Afrin and promoting their actions on social media and websites. From the methods applied in these types of attacks, it is understood that some of these groups have links to Turkish secret services. So basically, I think part of this is in relation to the Afrin Hawks and the other group that came out in early September that also was accused of being purely a social media thing, Hawks Revenge. These groups both claimed bombings within Afrin city that they said were targeting like military vehicles. But I mean, it's clear from civilian activist footage that civilians were killed in these attacks.
Yeah, there was a bombing, right? It was a suicide, wasn't it? Or it was at least
I think it was a motorbike.
Motorbike, that's right. Yeah, motorbike attack. What was that?
I believe that took place in July. I don't have the exact date, but it happened near one of the main circles within Afrin city. And there's security camera footage. Actually, that day there was actually two bombings. There was one there and one across town near another traffic circle. And yeah, it's clear from local activist media that these did take a couple of civilian lives. And the groups online that claimed them said they were targeting, Turkish army vehicles or rebels or whatever. But I think that is what this statement is referring to when it alleges that groups have links to Turkish secret services, saying they're like some sort of false flag thing.
Well, I mean, was it the JITEM? It wouldn't be the first time they've done that. However, I was speaking to the guy Ferhat Batman, the YPG fighter we had on the podcast, and he was saying to me, I think it was Ferhat was saying this. Anyway, he was saying to me that he believes some of it is regime actually as well. There were like regime guys coming in under the kind of banner of Wrath of Olives or some other Kurdish resistance group there and doing stuff. Have you heard any of that?
I've seen that on social media. Read someone say somewhere that they thought Afrin Hawks was a regime-linked outfit, but I haven't seen any proof. That's all social media rumors. I can't say for sure.
Okay. And Wrath of Olives, they even have a website, right? Why? Like, it's so unusual. The website, people need to check out. I don't know the address. Probably don't check it out, actually. You probably end up on a watch list like you and me. But, it's weird. They got this website. It's quite well put together. I mean, the website looks like trash, but it's clearly they've thought it through and they want to show stuff.
It's not that different from the regular YPG website, like with the way it's set up.
Funny, weird.
Well, I just meant in the not great design of it.
Yeah, but it's what my point is. They want to get the message out there. I mean, it must scare. Come on, like it must scare the people there. I know this isn't like huge attacks, but could you imagine hearing about all these? Your friends have been, the rebels. Your mate's just been shot by some insurgent group that's hanging around basically in the streets that they're occupying. How many people have actually been killed under the banner of Wrath of Olives?
So they've claimed a number of them. Most of the Wrath of Olives attacks have been documented, unlike the YPG. YPG only about a third actually have. But with Wrath of Olives, they've claimed upwards of 50, 60, but from video footage, I'd say there's only about 35 that are definite, where you can actually see the bodies and the bodies within the context of just being killed. Yeah, and if you combine that with the official YPG insurgency, that puts it, I'd say there's about 60 confirmed, and of course they claim like 4, 5, 6 as many.
Have you seen any evidence that Wrath of Olives is effective? Like, are they changing the way that the rebels in Afrin operate or anything like that?
There was on, again, from pro-YPG media claims that there was like security meetings between the Turkish military and rebel groups, telling people not to be traveling around at night. And I mean, definitely sort of predating Wrath of Olives, there had been significant buildup within the main towns of Afrin. There was all these videos on social media of concrete barriers similar to the ones used in Idlib being brought in by Turkey on all these flatbed trucks, and these have appeared within the centers of all these towns. There have been buildup of military bases that also are combined with the police headquarters, the recently created local police that are working in conjunction with the local councils.
Okay. Let's talk about what Turkey is doing in Afrin. You know, the other day I saw all these images of traffic signs written in Turkish. In fact, there were some of them that didn't even have Arabic. Obviously, the Kurdish has been taken away, but the Arabic wasn't even on there. There was just Turkish signs and you know, there's Turkish flags sprayed on some of the shutters on the shops. I mean, you know, let's talk about that. They've kind of taken over, right? This wasn't really, it doesn't look like the rebels have moved in and made it home. It looks like Turkey has moved in and made it home.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. Yeah, as you said, on all public signs, Kurdish has been taken down. And this was an area, as I said before, the population was 200,000, estimated to be 90+% Sunni Kurdish, with some minority religious groups, like Yazidis. I think there were some Alevis, and a couple, I know Hans Scholl has told me that there was small, actually Protestant Christian, a small Protestant Christian population within.
Oh, he would know that, wouldn't he? Only he would know that.
Yeah. Since then, though, obviously demographics have shifted. As I said before, over 100,000 local inhabitants are said to have fled. Some of them have returned. They were sort of blocked by all sides, from rebels, from the YPG, from the government, from trying to return. But there's a mountainous region in the southeast that a lot of civilians sort of trickled in through. But yeah, and then you've had estimates of 50,000 plus internally displaced peoples from other parts of Syria that have been relocated within Afrin. So these are people from Homs, from the Homs pocket, from parts of southern Syria around Damascus. And this is a significant population.
This is where the claims of ethnic cleansing come in, because, you know, I mean, all the Kurds have been chased out. Then they bring different people in. All their signs have been taken down. They put a different language on the signs. I mean, it kind of is, I think, in a way, you know. I mean, I'm not saying that the people moving in are wrong to move in there, you know. God knows if I was in the middle of the war and someone said, hey, do you want to live in this house? I'm like, yep, thank you very much. But there are stories of people even coming back to their houses and they're like, "What? Who are you? You know, why does this person live here?" Yeah,
and I will say, to be very fair to the IDPs, obviously they have no choice. I mean, they're not. There's a big IDP camp they've built in Afrin. I know a number of them were settled into this IDP camp just north of Idlib. And there have been numerous written accounts by these people saying, like, we don't want to be doing this. Like, we feel bad for the original inhabitants. And yeah, we're stuck here. There have been reports of some going back to Idlib or going to other parts of North Aleppo.
I think we should be clear here, because anybody who knows me knows that, you know, a lot of people say to me, "You're pro-YPG, you know, blah, blah," whatever, mate, whatever, say what you want. But, like, don't take my word for it and don't take my bias for it or whatever. If you look up, there was a very good article written recently. I can't remember who wrote it, a female reporter, I think, or a rebel activist. And she's very pro-rebel and always has been. And even she wrote an article saying what is happening in Afrin is absolutely disgusting. Like, it's not just, you know what I mean? It's not just people saying, "Oh, bidgy, like, whatever." It's not just that. It's a real situation, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And, I mean, some of the local media outlets that are located in northern Aleppo, and I'm sure have funding from Turkey, have been reporting on abuses in Afrin too.
Yeah. Do you think they will ever get Afrin back? How is it going to happen? Do you think there's any hope?
I mean, it all really comes down to the overall situation in Syria. I mean, really tied up in the negotiations between Turkey and Russia over Idlib. Iran and the government like to play spoilers in those. But yeah, it's really hard to say. I mean, I don't think any sort of YPG insurgency is going to be able to take it back on their own. I mean, they've definitely, throughout this process, shown that, I mean, as skilled as they are, and obviously they've proven themselves throughout the war, going up against the state power that is Turkey in a more conventional sense is probably not going to happen.
Yeah, it's madness. I mean, I know a lot of diaspora who are like, yeah, we can fight them, and then you talk to someone who's actually on the ground, and they'll tell you openly, they'll be like, that's madness. Of course we can't. We can't do that. So yeah, it's not looking good. Who's controlling Afrin right now? Is there any one specific group that is in charge other than Turkey? Who's their main guys?
So it sort of has split up into several different, I'd say, little fiefdoms, correlating with where these different rebel groups fought during the operation. So within the southwest, you have Felek Asham. This is the territory that's right next to Idlib. So that makes sense that they fought there because Idlib's their home. Within the northeast, you have Ajab al-Shamia, the Levant front, who is local to that stretch of northern Aleppo, like Azaz. And so they've sort of crossed the border during the operation and have taken the territory right over there. There's various Turkmen groups, Furqat, Sultan Murad, and Suleiman Shah, that have seized different territories. Furqat al-Hamza, which is one of Turkey's closest allies, which was actually a Department of Defense-backed group when they were fighting ISIS, when it was that little stretch in North Aleppo. But since then, Turkey's taken over that portfolio. I mean, Trump closed the train and equip program when it came to Syrian rebels. And since then, also demographically, it appears that it's definitely shifted towards a more Turkmen makeup. I believe the commander, Saif Abu Bakr, is Turkmen as well. And then there's Ahrar al-Sharqiyya, which is a very infamous group that's been getting in trouble since their founding in 2016. I mean, they had that infamous run-in with U.S. Special Forces in North Aleppo when U.S. Special Forces drove in across the border during the start of Operation Olive Branch. And Ahrar al-Sharqiyya sort of chased them out.
Yeah, I saw that. That was the strangest video ever. They're just basically screaming at them, and but they all got guns, So obviously the troops, the US troops, would have just, if they wanted to, just like dead everybody. But obviously that's not what they want to happen. But it's a very odd video, man.
With that group. I will say, I'd say most of the rebel groups in the area are basically just, you have the Turkmen who are Turkmen nationalists or Turkish nationalists. You have some groups that are like more Islamist tinged. You have a lot of groups that are basically just local town militias. But Ahrar al-Sharqiyya is definitely, I'd say, the most Islamist group involved in Afrin. There were rumors that they were, because all these guys are originally from Deir ez-Zor, from eastern Syria. And there was long-time rumors on social media that they were tied to various al-Qaeda members that were heads of Jabhat al-Nusra out in the east before ISIS took it over in 2014. I haven't found any proof of this, but I did find through some rebel reporting that their commander was a member of Ahrar al-Sham out in Deir ez-Zor. So definitely hardline Islamist ties. And actually, it was in June that there was this whole controversy within Afrin where these posters showed up overnight, sort of telling women to wear the hijab, sort of telling people to pray, whatever.
It's Sharia shit, like literally Sharia level signs, yeah.
Yeah, and pretty quickly, I think this first popped up on Twitter through, I think Ayman Tamimi posted it. And pretty quickly it blew up within a couple of hours. I know me and Christian Tribert looked into the logo at the bottom, and it was actually a dawah, a proselytization group based in Idlib connected to, what's his name, Muasani, the Saudi Jabal al-Nusra Tide cleric. And I know Ayman al-Tamimi reached out to because the posters actually had the printing office's number on the bottom.
Yeah, I remember that. Everyone was doing like Christian from Bellingcat was doing like a zoom in. And it was like, what? Like, let's just call them. It was crazy.
Yeah, so I think al-Tamimi called them, and it turned out the posters were printed and paid for by Ahrar Sharqiya. So they were the ones that put that all up. And to be fair to the other rebel groups and the local councils and stuff, those were immediately torn down. Everyone was pretty pissed about them.
Yeah, after everyone went mental on Twitter.
Yeah, but I think there is definitely a real divergence between Ahrar Sharqiya's outlook and most of the other rebel groups. They're definitely...
No, I agree. I'm just joking. But there is the problem where, I agree with you. There is more nuance to it than that. However, you have to start questioning the integrity of a group that then just kind of works hand in hand with them, And I get it. There are many different alliances happening there, but after everything we've seen happening in the area already, put it this way, if I was a civilian there, I wouldn't be thinking, oh, well, okay, they said take it down. Well, I trust them now. I'd be thinking, shit, like, I've got to get out of here.
Yeah, it's very interesting that Turkey's put up with 2 years of their behavior like this. There's multiple videos you can find on YouTube of like summary field executions by their fighters. They've been in trouble time and time again, like in the media. I don't know why they're allowed to control, they control the northwestern corner of Afrin around the town of Rajo, and they're also prevalent within the city itself.
I wonder why.
Well, actually, speaking about that, I know some people have said that there's several other groups, smaller and not nearly as notorious. There's Jaish al-Sharqiya, which they're all made up of locals, mostly Deir ez-Zor, I think some from Hasaka and some from Raqqa. And people have alleged that Turkey's sort of building up these groups in case of operations, east of the Euphrates.
Yeah, absolutely. Jokes aside, I'm kind of saying, oh, I wonder why. Obviously, I'm implying that they don't mind working with Islamists. However, I think that's right. I think they don't mind working with them, but I don't think it's part of this kind of global caliphate. I don't think that's what they're trying to go after and being like, yeah, let's back them guys. Maybe we'll get it. They don't care. They've got their country to run into the ground. But what I think is, like you're saying, it's like, well, if we need someone, those are our guys. The same way they were doing dealings with Jabhat al-Nusra and stuff like that. It is as awful as it is. It's pragmatic in times of war. Now, I can't suddenly say, oh yeah, well, if YPG are working with the regime, it's not that bad because it's pragmatic, and then say, oh, it's terrible if Turkey do whatever. Obviously, the ideology is very different. But you are right. It does make sense for them if they're preempting certain attacks again into the region.
Yeah, for sure.
And let's talk about, I'll wrap this up soon, I know you've got to go, but let's talk about the situation with the kidnappings. I saw this video, this week, and it's awful. There's this young lad, and he's got a blindfold on, and they put a gun to his head, and, there's a guy standing above him with a mask on. He puts a gun to his head, and he says, speak, whatever. And the kid says, look, there's 20 Kurdish young men here. They're going to execute us all if two other guys, he mentions them, I don't know, Jim, Jack, whatever. And he says, if those guys get hurt, then we're all going to get killed. And then he says to him, now say it in Kurdish. And then he says it in Kurdish. It's really dark. And this isn't the first video I've seen like that. I've seen many of them. So do you have any insight into what's going on with this kind of tit-for-tat kidnapping and little executions here and there?
I don't remember necessarily like some sort of kidnapped execution video, but there definitely is. I mean, I've seen reports of possibly over 1,000 reported kidnappings since March.
1,000?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to verify any of this. I mean, definitely these show up all over Kurdish media, and I mean, both rebel and Kurdish media in the area is run by activists, as of course it's on the ground. So I definitely like to try to confirm things from however many different angles. But yeah, large-scale kidnappings, indisputably, like hundreds of people. And I mean, it's really, I think like a way for these groups to try to fund each other or try to fund themselves.
Really, it's just like a criminal money situation.
Yeah, I mean, they've split up Afrin into these various little fiefdoms, and yeah, they're trying to profit from it. I mean, there's all these reports of sort of destroying olive groves and trying to like maybe transplant some of the trees down to other parts of rebel-controlled territory.
It sounds weird. This is a weird thing to say. Maybe it's a weird connection, perhaps. But to me, it sounds a little bit like Kabul in Afghanistan in the 80s. And the whole place was just split up between different, warlords and tribal factions. And it was a city, but each section was almost a city within itself,
Yeah, I mean, I will say definitely the situation in Afrin's not a binary between Turkey and their FSA allies and Kurdish civilians. The situation is definitely way more multifaceted than that. You have Turkey and their backed Syrian government institutions, like the local councils and the police. You have the various FSA groups that, again, are split along different lines. You have the Turkmen nationalists, you have Ahrar Sharqiya, and then you have all these different local groups that are trying to profit in various racketeering and looting ventures. Then you have the civilians themselves, and the civilians, I mean, you have the indigenous inhabitants, you have the tens of thousands of IDPs who have moved into the region, and then obviously you have the YPG, the insurgents.
Yeah, a real mess. Alex, can you tell us, before we go, about your research, how you managed to get all of this information together? Because I haven't really seen many people trying to track the olive branch, the Wrath of Olive situation as you have been,
Yeah, so I've been going through both the official YPG press releases. Every couple of days, or every week or so, they announce like a series of insurgent actions throughout Afrin. And some of them have video, some of them have pictures. And so I keep track of those, keep track of the Wrath of Olive's actions, and compare them. Actually, something we didn't bring up before, sorry. Geography, one of the main differences besides the execution videos is all the officially declared YPG actions take place within Afrin, whereas the Wrath of Olive ones, some of them take place in Afrin, and most of them recently actually have been taking place within the Euphrates Shield territory. So within the other part of North Aleppo controlled by Turkey and the rebels. So that's definitely a major divergence between the two groups' actions.
And you've been tracking this just through mostly open source stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Also trying to corroborate it with the social media accounts from various rebel groups, through pro-rebel and pro-Kurdish media.
And you speak a bit of Arabic as well, right?
I'm a student at the moment, and I'm a couple semesters in, but I could definitely read more that I can understand or speak in Shami dialect.
Yeah, Habibi, yeah, mate. All right, man. Where can people get hold of you and keep up to date with this excellent work you're doing?
So I'm on Twitter, AKMCKEEVER, AK McKeever. That's where I'm most active. I'm definitely working towards writing some sort of piece, going more in depth within the burgeoning insurgency and trying to coordinate it with imagery, maps, graphs, etc. And that, I don't know, maybe Bellingcat, maybe popularfront.com.
Well, I can't get .com. It cost me too much. Someone else had it, so it's popularfront.co. But a couple years ago, it was really cool to have a .co. It was like a Colombian, dot URL, whatever. So I'll just pretend it's that. Yeah, we're just so cool. We have .co. But no, definitely do check out Alex's work. It's really, really good. Is there a website you use at all, or just the Twitter?
I haven't published much in a long time, but I'm definitely hoping to publish this soon. But yeah, Twitter.
All right, mate. Good luck. Thank you very much for that. That was great.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So that was Alexander McKeever speaking about Afrin, the state it's been left in, and Wrath of Olives, the maybe YPG, maybe not YPG assassination squad that's running around murdering the people who invaded at the start of the year. This episode was sponsored by thedefensepost.com, defense with an S. If you like what we're doing with Popular Front, please do support at patreon.com/popularfront. Thank you very much to Patrick Bronte, Alium Leroy, Axel Iverson, Cedarfen, Chad Walker, Cody Bergerud, Dan Dunham, Diana Gorvanek, Emily Molly, Fletcher Tate, James, Joanne Stocker, Lawrence Abrahams, LH, Margaret Bowling, Peter McCormick, Ryan Sandercock, Stephen Henderson, Teddy, and Zachary Hinch. Please do follow us on YouTube. That is youtube.com/popularfront. Subscribe there because there will be some information on the YouTube soon about the merchandise that I'm going to be putting out very soon. There will be t-shirts, this thing called a trench mug that I've got coming. What else? Patches, like morale patches, like military patches, all sorts of stuff. So go to youtube.com/popularfront, subscribe, and there will be a thing pop up there telling you all about it soon. For all things Popular Front, follow me on Twitter. That's Jake_Hanrahan, HANRAHAN, or Popular Front CO. That's the other Twitter account. And also on Instagram, instagram.com/popular.front. Music this episode, the intro was by Home and the outro was by Son of Old. soundcloud.com/son-of-old. Actually go there because we made this little kind of EP of the various different music we use in the outros. It's called Synthline EP Part 1, so do check that out.